Hello. Today I'm gonna be featuring one of my old school favorite cruisers. The matchmaking, as you can tell, is full tier 10, including a carrier, and pay special attention to all the battleships in this game, because they are quite relevant and one of the reasons why I selected this commentary. Now, first of all, thank you all for the support you're given, especially the Twitch channel. We're actually 1,500 followers away from 100,000, so that 100k giveaway is literally around the corner. So thank you very much for all the support you're given. I do really appreciate it, and honestly I can't wait to be able to give you all of that stuff. Moving on, the Hindenburg. The Hindenburg has been around for a long time. What made the Hindenburg stand out, especially when it was released, was its armor. It had a lot of AP DPM, but it doesn't have improved AP angles. The AP penetration isn't particularly good, but the DPM was quite good. The HE Alpha has always been pretty damn weak, and honestly the fire chance isn't really that special either. The fire chance is, I think, 13% base. So what made the Hindenburg stand out back in the day was, what made it stand out was the armor. The Hindenburg has 30mm upper belt and 30mm deck armor. Now this was considered very tanky. Corfors, you could angle against Corfors and bounce it, you could angle against Montana, Iowa. Even when the French battleships came out, only really the Republic could overmatch its armor. But this game is a good example of something that has been happening a lot in World of Warships, and that is the overmatch power creep. In fact, in case you didn't notice it, there is not a single battleship in this game that can't overmatch my armor. Every single of all the 10 battleships in this game, every single one is capable of overmatching my 30mm upper belt and deck armor. We got multiple Yamatos, we got a Kremlin, we got a couple of Republics. All of them, regardless of from which angle they hit my ship, will be able to overmatch that armor, and they will be able to deal damage. What this obviously means is when you're facing a lot of ships capable of overmatching your armor, is the same way, for example, a battleship plays safer when there's a Smolensk. They don't want to push in and burn to death. The same way cruisers will play safer when there are battleships that are capable of overmatching their armor. You're forced to. You can't angle, you can't mitigate, you can't deal with the damage in any way. So you're forced to play more passive. You're forced to play safer. And that's basically what I'm doing right here. I'm playing very far back, where I have the slow shell velocity, or the time it takes for the shells to travel, on my side, so I can maneuver and dodge. I can play with my acceleration to juke these shells, and more importantly, at this range, dispersion also comes into play, which makes it harder for these battleships to actually land shells on me. And you can see they're all trying to take their pot shots at me. We got AP shells landing in from every single direction, and my potential damage keeps going up. This is the only way you can deal with overmatching battleships in the Hindenburg. Because the Hindenburg doesn't really have other strengths, other survivability perks on its side. It's not fast. In fact, it's very slow. It only does 33.1 knots with the speed flying. The handling on it is pretty dreadful. The acceleration is questionable. It doesn't slow down particularly fast. The turning circle is something like 800 meters. The rudder shift is almost 10 seconds, and that is with the rudder shift module. And it's not particularly stealthy either. The concealment is something like 12.6, so yeah, after the changes, it used to be better, but then they changed IFHE, so now it's 12.6 on the concealment. So it is, the only thing it really had going for it was that armor. And Wargaming, well, they're determined to completely kill the effectiveness of 30mm plating. They keep adding these overmatching battleships. We had the Georgia, and we've had the Ohio, and we got the Kremlin, and the most recent thing that is of course going to be Yashima. Yet another tier 10 battleship that is going to completely ignore all the cruiser armor in the game, well, with very few exceptions, and it's going to be able to overmatch the hell out of cruisers. It's somewhat amusing that we have this circular problem where battleship captains complain about cruisers hiding behind islands and HE spamming them, but then when the cruisers try to play in the open water, it doesn't matter if they angle, they'll still get overmatched by the AP. So it's kind of like this cycle of you get overmatched, you hide behind islands, battleships get frustrated, you're hiding behind islands, and then they don't want to push in. And Yeah, okay, my team, by the way, I don't want to talk too much about my team, but my team is basically a complete disaster this game. We have all my battleships are in our spawn and they're reversing and hiding, and my carrier is AFK, so this is going to be a challenging game, to put it lightly. Still, my point is that 30mm plating is not nearly as valuable as it used to be, and they're turning it even worse with all these new additions that seem capable of completely ignoring this armor. Why is this relevant? Well, it's relevant because the upcoming IFHE rework, which is supposedly going to buff the armor, well, it's not going to buff anything on the Hindenburg. Once the IFHE rework hit, Hindenburg will still have its exactly the same armor, so it's still going to be just as vulnerable as it is now. Some ships, some tier 10 ships will get buffs, like Salem and Des Moines. They go from 27 to 30mm, but 2 years ago, that would have been a huge buff. In the current state of the game, it's an okay buff. It's not really going to change too much, is it? The other aspect, of course, of this change is the way they're changing IFHE. IFHE will still be able to give you 30% more pen, which is of course relevant for the Hindenburg, and in fact I am running IFHE Hindenburg in this commentary because I think IFHE Hindenburg is fantastic in the current meta. Especially in this particular matchmaking. This matchmaking, even though it's also a good example of how useless 30mm plating on the Hindenburg is, it's also a good example of why IFHE is such a good pick. Yes, you're very easy to deal damage to, because they overmatch you. They can easily deal damage to you from any angle and basically any range. But on the other hand, by running IFHE on the Hindenburg, you can do the exact same back to them. With IFHE, you bump that 50mm HE penetration up to 66mm, which means you can pen Yamato's 57mm deck armor, and you can pen Kremlin's 60mm deck armor. That's why my HE has been doing so much damage. Now, I'm not exactly been starting a lot of fires. In fact, if we look at it, we got over 100 hits and only 3 fires, and Hindenburg is pretty trash at starting fires. The reason for this is many. The base fire chance on the ship is 13%. Keep in mind that these values I've changed these values a fair bit. First of all, I run IFHE, which of course cuts the fire chance by 3%, down from 13 to 10%. But then I'm also running Demo Expert, which bumps it up to 12, and both the flags, which bumps it up to 14%. But something you need to keep in mind is that all tier 10 ships have a base fire resistance coefficient of 50%. So that means if you're shooting at a tier 10 ship with 10% fire chance, you actually only have 5% fire chance. It gets cut in half. So my glorious 14% with this full build, basically pimped out for HE in every possible way, actually only has a 7% fire chance. Now, how is IFHE going to change this? Well, instead of reducing the fire chance by 3%, IFHE is going to cut the fire chance in half. So that means that 13% fire chance is going to get cut to 6.5. Now you can add that same 4% to that 6.5. I think that's how it was supposed to work. And you can bump it up to 10.5. But with fire resistance coefficient being cut in or added into it, this obviously means that your fire chance is going to be a bit more than 5% on a cruiser in tier 10. So in every possible way, the IFHE rework is just going to be a nerf for the Hindenburg. That is really the only way to look at it. It is not going to improve your quality of life in any way, and it's going to make one of the best builds on the Hindenburg, in my opinion, quite significantly worse. You go from 14 to 10.5, or more realistically from 7.5, or sorry, from 7% to a bit more than 5% fire chance. Iron Strike procced, I'm of course running Gunter Lutyens, and at this point I'm so disappointed in my teammates. My Yamato and Republic, in case you haven't noticed, they're reversing into the corner of the map. The Republic is reversing so far that he's grounding into the island in the bottom right corner. So at this point I'm just willing to try to juke, basically nose tank this Yamato, even though I can't really tank him. I'm just trying to avoid his shells because, well, I want to win and I need to get rid of this Yamato who's pushing into our spawn. Still, IFHE rework. I have multiple issues with the IFHE rework. It's buffing Daring. Daring won't need IFHE after it. Daring doesn't really need buffs. It's already really, really strong. It's also straight up a buff for the Kremlin. because it's going to discourage people from running IFHE, and it's one of the few ways cruisers can actually deal HE damage to it. That ship really doesn't need any buffs whatsoever. And also it's a nerf to American BBs, like Montana, Iowa, North Carolina, because they're improving the penetration of light cruisers, which means light cruisers running IFHE can now pen 38mm of plating, which of course includes, that's kind of the American battleship special. They have 38mm deck armor, so that's going to be able to be penetrated by light cruisers after the change. Not exactly optimal. I don't like it. What I do like with these recent changes, not related to the IFHE rework, is that I've been able to switch out. Well, the AA module has been nerfed. I can't really say if I like it or not, but basically they killed the AA module. There was an AA Guns Mod 1 module that used to give you extra flak. They made it so that it lowers the cooldown of priority sector. This is obviously a dreadful trade because it's significantly less useful, but instead you can now slot main battery mod 2, which gives you 15% main battery traverse speed, which means that on the Hindenburg you have a 22.5 second turret traverse, and this is actually quite enjoyable. It makes the ship much more enjoyable to play. Note that those shells on the right, yeah, that's HE being shot by my Yamato. I did say this game was played today, and it's Sunday, and it's patch weekend, so obviously the level of play is going to be somewhat questionable, but it still really just hurts me to see these tier 10 players reverse into corners and shoot HE with the biggest guns in the game. It's sad. You'd think at this point people would have some grasp of the basic concepts of the game, and at least they would try to do some tanking in their BBs. Still, where I actually completely lost my train of thought. Let me take a sip of rum as I'm thinking. The Hindenburg, in its current state, is actually, in my opinion, very enjoyable. It has its weaknesses, namely that it's very easy to deal damage to it. Besides the Hydro, DDs don't really struggle to deal damage to this thing. It's a pretty large ship that handles poorly. It's a juicy torpedo target. It's got poor concealment, so you don't really sneak up on anyone in the thing. It's quite slow, so cruisers have an easy time hitting it. Battleships have an easy time hitting it as well, because you're slow and you're clumsy and your concealment is poor. This all makes you a very juicy target. So Hindenburg is fundamentally a ship that is easy to hit and easy to deal damage to. And what I particularly like about this IFHE build is that, well, you can deal damage easily back to just about everything. You have, with the build I'm running right now, with your spotter plane and the reload, you can punch back really, really hard at every single target. Your IFHE allows you to pen all these BBs. If people give broadside, the AP is punishing. Now the AP doesn't have any special characteristics. The penetration is quite poor. You don't have any improved pen angles, but the DPM is very good. So it rewards good timing on the AP. The HE is consistent. It's not good at starting fires. I mean, this isn't even with the IFHE rework in the game, and I have 223 hits and 4 fires. So the fire chance has never been Hindenburg's strength. It's just really bad at starting fires. But you deal consistent damage with good penetration, and that's really all you need. It's a loyal all-around workhorse, and I enjoy the Hindenburg for this. I enjoy its strengths. But the IFHE rework is obviously going to hurt the ship. It's going to hurt it more, because sometimes these fires can be quite necessary. Like in this case, the Puerto Rico is pushing in. We started a fire, he made a mistake of damage conning it, and by some miracle we actually land all 12 shells of our next volley, and that allows us to start a second fire as he hides behind the island. And Puerto Rico, of course, suffers from longer duration fires, and because he has so much health pool, the fire also deals a lot of damage. So I'm all pretty confident that that Puerto Rico behind that island is simply going to burn to death. So I switch my target to the next ship as I wait for the Puerto Rico to burn to death. At this point, well, our battleships are still hiding in the corner, our carrier is still AFK, and the only camp we have is B, and it's staying in our hands, mostly because I killed the guy trying to take it back. Well, I didn't kill him yet, I killed him now, when he burned to death from that fire. So, this is pretty much a definition of a weekend game. Just trying to do your best to keep your team in the game, while they are trying their utmost to throw it. My battleships still have not pushed up for some reason, which is confusing considering there's a Republic there and there's a very low HP Kremlin. Those are easy kills, but they are still shooting HE at these battleships. Hard game to say the least. But Hindenburg, consistent HE damage. Note that this will not change, this would not be different without IFHE. Republic only has 32mm plating, so IFHE is not necessary to deal damage to him. In fact, IFHE reduces your fire chance against him, so you deal less damage. But Hindenburg is not about the fires, even though we do get a wither, it's more about that consistent damage. He tries to juke us by accelerating, but I realize what he's doing, and I aim in front of him. He damage cons the fires as well, but my shells are already in the air, so I'm switching target to the Hindenburg, who's trying to contest the cap. Switch to AP, I actually aim a bit too high. Keep in mind, when you're shooting someone with the spotter plane, you need to aim a bit lower than where the crosshair shows, because of this perspective change, and I aim a bit too high. My Des Moines does finish him off though. At this point, it looks like this should be a win. We are 7 versus 2. But our battleships are horrendously out of position. They still have a Kleber and a Midway left. And both Kleber and Midway are terrifying ships in the hands of people who know what they're doing. Even worse was the Hindenburg dropped some torpedoes, and my Des Moines sadly basically sat still or sailed directly into them and got himself killed. That was the first sign that something is about to go wrong. The next sign is my Hindenburg down at A, even though there is a Kleber there, sails in a straight line, and he gets torpedoed by the Kleber. So now the Yamato is all alone against the DD, and if the carrier has any sense, he's gonna go for him as well. The battleship division is pinging me to go to sea, but with 2 minutes 20 seconds left, I can't make it there. In fact, the Republic has a better chance of making it there than I do, because the Republic is faster than I am. With the speed flag, this thing does, what, 33, a bit more, whereas Republic can do almost 34 knots with the speed boost. So he's actually in a better position. What I'm trying to do here is, I know that the only way we're probably going to win this is by getting a kill on the Midway. The planes, I've seen the planes get sent basically right across my screen, so I suspect the carrier is hiding somewhere nearby, and I'm hoping by pushing up I might give my team vision, and with all these battleships on the field we might be able to get a devastating strike and kill him off, giving us the points we so desperately need. That is the hope. But there's torpedo planes running right in front of me, so I know the carrier is somewhere in front of me. The Yamato keeps pushing in, which probably isn't the best idea, because once again, he wants to contest the cap, which is a decent choice, but against the carrier and the Kleber, there can really only be one outcome, and I'm just expecting to see torpedoes pop up. I'm looking down, and there we see them. And that's going to be the end of our Yamato, and I actually don't want to watch that anymore, because we already know what the outcome there is going to be. We're going to continue hunting for the carrier, as very predictably our Yamato down south gets killed. And I actually managed to catch the Midway. The Yamato dies, but if we do kill the Midway, that might be our ticket back into the game. He's reversing behind the island. I get an AP volley off, I turn in, obviously. I have 45 seconds to catch him. And I see HE flying in from my 2 battleships. 2 volleys of HE. Both of them are still shooting HE, even at the broadside Midway. If the Midway just reverses, we have no chance of killing him. But much to my surprise, the Midway actually charges forward and turns full broadside to both of my battleships. So we are redeemed. We have another chance to get back into this game. And looking to the right, we see another volley of HE come flying in from my battleships. And to no one's surprise whatsoever, this weekend patch game ends up being a loss. And my last view is of my Republic with the HP perk sitting at 90,000 health, calmly sailing north. Game ends, 265,000 damage, Wither, Confederate, high caliber. We only 8 fires, of course. You don't get too many, not too many citadels, but then again, we had to play so very safe this game because of the matchmaking. Team score wise, we topped the score for our team. But that's pretty much all we really want to talk about. Our AFK carrier, of course, made the game quite difficult, and then our battleship division made it impossible. That's really the way it sometimes goes, especially on weekends. Detailed report-wise, well, we only tanked 42,000 damage, but even then, look at the AP shell damage. We ate 9 AP shells and they combined did 26,000. And it's not like we weren't being shot at a lot. In fact, if we look at potential damage, I have 1.8 million potential damage. It was mostly the fact that I was avoiding the shells because, well, as you can see from the AP damage, you have to avoid the shells when you have this kind of matchmaking because it's basically impossible to bounce them unless you manage to get it perfectly on your belt armor. HE damage, 267 hits, 147. We did get a wither, but with only 8 fires, so that was obviously mostly on the battleships that we got that fire damage. Anyway, let me move on to the recommended build for this ship. Alright, starting off, one of the main issues that I highlighted there is, of course, oh, sorry, we're jumping ahead here. One of the main issues is, of course, the armor. 27mm nose, which is pretty good, and of course, 30mm upper belt and 30mm deck armor. This used to be really good armor. These days, it really isn't that special, is it? And I did mention that this ship, it trades a lot to get this armor as well. That's the thing, the Hindenburg trades a lot to get this armor. The concealment is only 12.6. That is not particularly good. And more importantly, if we look at the maneuverability, well, this is Thunder's maneuverability, 820, 10.4, and the Hindenburg has 809.7. So in terms of handling, you are more battleship, agile battleship to be fair. You're more agile battleship than you are cruiser. So the ship gives up a lot, and the speed is of course 33.1, and you have no speed boost. The ship gives up a lot for this armor, and my issue is that this armor is being continually power crept, and even though the IFHE rework is giving some ships armor, it's not really helping the Hindenburg maintain its identity of a so-called tanky cruiser. In fact, the tankiness on the Hindenburg is one of the things that have been dipping steadily in a steady curve downwards every time they release one of these new super battleships with these overmatching guns. And the Yashima will continue to add to this trend, and the IFHE rework will do nothing besides discourage the use of IFHE from this ship. Build-wise, consumables, I do run Hydro and Spotter Plane, mostly because Fighter Plane is more of a joke than anything, and Hydro Defensive AA is also very ineffective, whereas the German Hydro is fantastic. Upgrade-wise, we run Spotter Plane Duration, as it compensates for being able to run Reload Booster. Also, that Spotter Plane allows you to proc Gunther Luthien's special proc as soon as possible, because that's what you want. With the recent buffs to Hindenburg Reload and then adding in Gunther Luthien's Reload, the DPM becomes quite powerful on this ship. Hydro Duration, and here we run this new main battery mod, main battery traverse speed upgrade. In the past I used to run AA guns, but as I mentioned, they've changed this from increasing the amount of flak you throw out. They have changed this from being a faster sector reinforcement, which, to put politely, is not very good. So we have spec'd out of that. I still run rudder shift, concealment, and once again, the legendary is not good on the Hindenburg, and this thing we're not even going to talk about it, and faster reload on the main guns. Captain build-wise, here we have, I think, some changes. Priority target, adrenaline rush, superintendent, concealment expert. That's the base build. After this, I really like IFHE to bump that penetration up to that juicy 66mm. And until the IFHE rework, this is going to be my build, that's for sure. It is just so good. That last game, it was IFHE helped me against 4 out of 5 of the enemy battleships. That's a pretty damn good percentage. Improve your fire chance by 2%. Run the flags, of course, as well, so you get it up to 14%. Expert loader and preventive maintenance. Especially if you have Gunther Luthiens, you get that 45% special perk buff, which makes up for the fact that you're not running turret survival in the first slot here, but you're instead running the spotter aircraft mod. So overall, the build synergizes really well together. Flag-wise, of course, You want to run the 2 fire flags that I mentioned, you want to run the improved heal, speed, faster consumable duration, and because you have so much health, I do actually quite like running the India Yankee for reduced fire duration. Everything past that is flavor. The AA flag is good. I run the detonation flag because it's press account and I have so many of them. I probably wouldn't bother otherwise. Anyways, that was my Hindenburg build, as well as some typical complaining about things I like and dislike in upcoming patches and things that will change. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you can take the time to drop me a sub on my YouTube, I do really appreciate the support. And if you feel like taking part in my Twitch 100k follower giveaway, we are only 1,500 followers away, so we are getting incredibly close to the 100k mark. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the week, and I'll see you guys next vid.